So Tuesday, September 11th was a day very similar to today. Not a cloud in the sky. First thing I did that morning, I went to the gym and I'm working out, and all of a sudden we heard a loud bang. The air conditioning system shook, and everybody said, "What's that? What's that?" And everybody said, I don't know. And we all went back to working out. And a few minutes later, word started to come up to the second floor. I was at the New York Sports Club on VC Street and Broadway, just a block and a half from the World Trade Center. And somebody said, a small plane hit the World Trade Center. And people were like, what? Really? That's crazy. So people started going outside, and we saw in the distance, I know it's only a block and a half, but it was so high up that you really couldn't see what was there, except we did see smoke coming out of where the plane had gone in. And then we started to see a few people jump. And I was like a deer in headlights, thinking, this is insane. Why are they jumping? Why don't they just go to the roof? And we're watching, and really there was no more working out after that. And then some time went by, and we hear this incredibly loud noise. And then it was just a split second that we could see it. The second plane hit the North Tower. And I mean, then obviously the genius that I am, I realized that's not a coincidence. And I went running back into the gym, grabbed my clothes, went running to the office, and I forget, two of my paralegals, Dana and Dawn, were standing there shaking downstairs on Park Place, which is just 2 blocks from the sports club. And I said, get out of here, we're under attack. I went upstairs, I don't know why, but just to make sure that no one else in my firm was staying. And my partner, Bruce Kay, who's also my cousin, he was there with my friend Joey. And poor Bruce was also shaking because his wife worked at Windows on the World. And he knew that since both towers had been hit, and not by small planes, that Jody, his wife, could be in real trouble. But he kept thinking, gee, maybe it was okay. We had a big fight this morning, and we were both late getting to work. And this is just as an aside, proof that fighting in a marriage can really be healthy, because it turned out that Jody was stuck in the subway, because once the Trade Center was hit, they turned off the subway, but she had no way of reaching Bruce because there was no cell reception down there. And we're standing in the corner office, we're watching people after people jumping. And it was just, I don't know, the only way I can say it, Shelli, is it was mesmerizing. We couldn't grasp what we were seeing as the hole got bigger and bigger. And finally, the doorbell rings. And Bruce goes running to the door, and it was Jody. And it was really a beautiful, like right out of a Hollywood movie. I'm so sorry, I was wrong this morning. No, I was wrong this morning. Kissing, I'm so glad you're okay. And then the 4 of us, Joey, Jody, Bruce, and I, stood in the corner office and just watched. And I'll remember also, my wife, Candy, called me up. And she said, what are you doing there? Do you know what happened? Because she was at home watching on the Today Show. And I said, yes, Candy, they're not going to attack 11 Park Place. I think we're probably okay. And as I said those words, the first tower started to fall. And we look at each other and we say, holy shit, we better get out of here. And we were smart enough not to try to take the subway because all the electricity in the building went out. So we ran downstairs. Now I'm on the 18th floor. I'm surprised how long it takes to run down 18 flights of stairs. But by the time we got down to the lobby, the smoke was starting to pour into our building. And we went running out the Murray side of the street. And then I'm one of those people that you've seen in countless photographs running away. I'm running north on Broadway as the fire engines and cops are going downtown. So look, there was nothing I could have done, but it just shows you my instinct was to flee when so many heroes, and they really are heroes, Shelli, they were running towards the disaster. And that probably, more than anything else, has influenced my career, just how in awe I am of these first responders.
So your office was steps from the World Trade Center. At the time, you were an attorney mainly helping FDNYers, correct?
Right. Yeah, injured firefighters, when they get injured in the line of duty, they're allowed to make a claim against the negligent building owner who violated the electrical code, which is usually the cause of a fire. So I was representing hundreds of firefighters before 9/11, and obviously I didn't know it at the time, but we lost 343 firefighters. And a lot of those firefighters were friends of mine, were clients of mine, were witnesses in my clients' cases. And that led us to the next few weeks. I don't know if you want me to get to past 9/11, but you know, my secretary, Barbara, and Dana, and Dawn, and it wasn't just me, it was everybody. We did what we could do. And we visited firehouses, and Barbara and some of the other women would bake trays of lasagna. This wasn't just us. This was a New York-centric thing. Everybody did this. But while we were visiting firehouses for the next weeks and months, we kept hearing all these guys coughing. And in fact, Dr. David Prezant of the FDNY Bureau of Health Service, he actually dubbed it the World Trade Center cough. And it was then that I realized, wow, this isn't going away. I've got to protect these guys. So we ended up filing 650 notices of claims against the city of New York. The law says you have to file a claim within 90 days of an incident to preserve your right to later bring a lawsuit. So I did that on behalf of all these guys with this World Trade Center cough in case it didn't go away. And wow, did the press kill me. The New York Times wrote, apparently one lawyer has no problem suing the city of New York when it's at its worst right now, when things are so terrible, when the city is grieving. Now, I wasn't suing, I was preserving the rights of my clients to bring a lawsuit if this cough turned out to be anything more than a cough. And I didn't want them to be time barred. And the fact is, both the federal government, when the EPA said the air is safe to breathe, and the city of New York, when they told everybody, go back to work, go back to school, it's okay, it's safe, they violated OSHA standards by not providing these guys with proper respiratory protection while the buildings burned for 99 days and they worked tirelessly on the pile. So I did that to protect their rights. Have I skipped over 9/11 too quickly? I ended up walking home like everyone else did. And then because we had no electricity and because we were south of Chambers Street, the Army had put fencing around Ground Zero, but it included my office. There was a tank parked on, I'll send you a picture of it too, right in front of my building at 11 Park Place. And because we had no electricity, we didn't come back. We weren't allowed back into our buildings. I mean, I did sneak back just to get my diary of court appointments. My partner and I came back, I think 2 weeks later, but we had a police escort to take us. We weren't allowed to stay other than just get our diary. But we didn't reopen until like early or mid-October because there was no electricity. So I remember we used to meet, my office, we would meet in Chinese restaurants. They'd let us come if we stayed for lunch, and that's how we got by. Fortunately, the courts had all postponed all their court appointments. They extended statutes of limitations. But if I can, I'll go back to, so I filed all these notice of claims before December 10th, 2001. And then I'm vacationing with my family in the Caribbean. And something happened in the Caribbean that really changed my life. I met Ken Feinberg. I had been watching the Giants play the Redskins at the hotel bar, and these three snot-nosed kids are rooting for the Redskins, and I'm rooting for the Giants. And you know, that's the great thing about sports. You can be rooting on one side and they're rooting on the other side, but then we're sharing a beer together afterwards. And they were all college kids. And yeah, I told them what I did, and they said, "Oh, our father is Ken Feinberg. He's the special master of the Victim Compensation Fund. Would you like us to introduce you?" And I said, "Okay." I call up Barbara, and I said, "Barbara, send me the medical records, the air sampling reports, the notice of claim." So when I met Ken Feinberg on Christmas morning of 2001, I was able to hand him these documents. And Ken said to me, "Gee, Rudy Giuliani told me that either you died on 9/11 or you lived. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got sick." I said, "Well, Ken, I'm really worried about these guys because, you know, it's one thing for a lawyer to have this World Trade Center cough or asthma or any respiratory illness. I can still work. But if you're a firefighter with asthma, you lose your career." And when Ken heard this, he said, "You know, I'd like to pursue this when we're back in New York." I made an appointment for the first week of January. I brought with me a doctor from Mount Sinai Hospital, a firefighter, and a construction worker. And we presented the case to Mr. Feinberg, and he said to me afterwards, if I drop the requirement that says that someone making a claim had to have seen a doctor or a hospital within 72 hours, will you drop all your notice of claims and bring all these people to the Victim Compensation Fund? And I said, "Absolutely. I have no interest in suing the city or the EPA. I'd love to go to the Victim Compensation Fund." It was a good thing for him because he was, at the time, he was having trouble getting firefighter widows to come. Shelli, they were so angry. All they wanted to do was sue the security companies, and they wanted to sue the airlines and sue the city of New York. And I said, this is a better way. This is non-litigation, and it will give us all peace. So I ended up representing in that first Victim Compensation Fund several dozen firefighter widows and some non-firefighter widows as well, and about 1,500 first responders. And that lasted all the way until 2003. Mr. Feinberg was incredible as far as being flexible and finding, and when I say non-litigious, non-adversarial, you didn't have to, there was none of this Perry Mason. Isn't it true that you weren't there long enough to have sustained this respiratory illness? It was nothing like that. He took everybody's word for it. And I mean, it was clear. I mean, guys, we handled so many hearings, and Mr. Feinberg did a lot of the hearings personally. Most of the hearings, though, were with Department of Justice lawyers. And I had the attorneys in my office doing this, you know, every day for months and months. And it was the most gratifying thing I ever did up until that point, helping, because I never helped so many people. You know, I've been used to helping people when they had individual accidents, individual car accidents, individual firefighters when they got hurt. But never had I represented thousands of, or hundreds of people, actually 1,500 people. So it was really, it was a very satisfying thing for me as an attorney.
Let me just break in here because I have known Michael Barasch for years. But until this conversation, I did not realize that you were the first attorney to protect those who were suffering health effects. You were the first to recognize and the first to do what you had to do to protect them. And there's a Yiddish word, beshert. It was meant to be that you met the lawyer, the head of the Victim Compensation Fund, while on vacation. You two were meant to get together. You're going to have to love the Redskins, I have to say, after this. Just as an
Although
aside.
Ken is actually
But
from
seriously,
Boston, so
okay. But just, I did not know until this moment that you were the first. I
well,
know that you have won more compensation for those who have suffered the health effects than any other lawyer in the 9/11 community. I had no idea that you almost knew this instinctively from day one
you know,
because you had worked with the FDNY.
yeah, I didn't know if it was instinct or just dumb luck that I ran into Ken. But obviously, the two of us realized immediately we can help each other. And by doing it, we can help so many people in the 9/11 community. I'll tell you another funny story, though. So I was in federal court before Judge Hellerstein, and there were hundreds of people there. And this is when the litigation was heating up. And not everybody went to the Victim Compensation Fund. There were a lot of people who were so angry, Shelli. All they wanted to do was sue. They wanted to sue Motorola for the bad radios, the airlines, of course. And this was their right to do it. And all these 9/11 related cases fell on Judge Hellerstein's docket. And he had an agenda. He's going through it and finally goes, is there anything else? Now, I had been a lawyer for a long time, but not a federal court lawyer. All my work was always, or almost always, in state court. And I sheepishly raised my hand. I said, Your Honor, what about the people who are sick? I represent hundreds of firefighters and police officers who are sick. And we're not even mentioning this. He goes, what cases are these? And I mentioned the World Trade Center cough, and he said, what's your name? I said, Michael Barasch. He goes, all right, I'm appointing you liaison to all the sick and injured people. And it was like, what? I don't even know what a liaison is. But that just shows you, be careful what you wish for. Be careful when you open your mouth. Fortunately, all my clients ended up going to the Victim Compensation Fund, and I did not have to pursue the litigation, which I really, I respect people who did it, but it wasn't anything I wanted to do as a New Yorker.
I want you to talk about James Zadroga, because the law that passed ultimately, finally, years later, to help ailing first responders and those impacted in the 9/11 community, those who lived there, those who went to school there. But this was your client.
So Jimmy was one of my original 1,500 clients who I brought to the Victim Compensation Fund. And when I first met him, I knew he had bad pulmonary illness. It was pulmonary fibrosis. And what I later learned is that's what people call black lung disease. That's what coal miners get. Jimmy was doing security around the perimeter of the World Trade Center for over 200 hours. And I remember distinctly one day he comes into my office with his daughter, Tyler Ann, who was about 4 or 5 years old. And Jimmy was so weak at that point that his daughter said, Daddy, I need to change your oxygen. And she lifted up the oxygen. I wanted to help, and she goes, no, I got this. And she changed Jimmy's oxygen container. So fast forward to, I think it was January of 2006, and Jimmy died of pulmonary fibrosis. And an autopsy done in New Jersey by Dr. Breton. It's amazing what the little details you remember. It showed ground glass in his lung tissue, as well as asbestos, chromium, lead, benzene. These are all known carcinogens. So at the time, the original Victim Compensation Fund had closed on December 22nd, 2003, although it didn't quite end up paying everybody until July of 2004. And so from 2004 to Jimmy's death in 2006, people kept calling me up, and I was sadly having to tell them, I'm sorry, the Victim Compensation Fund is closed. Hey, John. And there was nothing I could do except constantly be calling Mr. Feinberg, who kept saying, no, Michael, we're not going to leave this open forever. Congress passed it. It had an end date. There's nothing you can do. But Jimmy's medical report and his autopsy was the evidence that the advocates needed for the next 4 years to argue for the passage of what became the James Zadroga Health and Compensation Act. It was passed at the end of 2010, and President Obama signed it into law when he was in Hawaii on January 2nd, 2011. So, but before that, after Jimmy died, there was this well-known controversy because I don't know exactly how, but Jimmy was fighting, or Jimmy's family was fighting for line of duty death benefits for him. You know, I always use the example of Stephen McDonald, you know, the famous cop who got shot, but who courageously lived for 25 years, by the way. And he was in a wheelchair, but such an inspiration. And they kept him on duty during those 25 years. He didn't want to retire. And when he did die of these gunshot wounds 25 years later, he was given a line of duty death benefit, or his family was. Well, that was what I argued should be fair for Jimmy Zadroga too. Yes, he was exposed in 2001, but he didn't get sick. The latency period was such he didn't get sick for a few years, and then he didn't die until 2006. So we were fighting the police department or the city of New York to get him his line of duty death benefits. They asked for the tissue samples from the autopsy. And the medical examiner concluded, based just on looking at the tissue samples, not on all the medical records that showed he had pulmonary fibrosis and asthma before that and breathing problems ever since 9/11, just looking at those tissue samples, the doctor concluded he died of an overdose of Oxycontin, because he said there's Oxycontin in this, and that's how people who overdose on Oxy, that's what happens to them. So his family was just outraged. So was the whole NYPD. I was getting calls from every union saying, you got to fight this. And we did. I hired this Dr. Baden, who used to be the medical examiner for the city of New York. And he reviewed the tissue samples and all the medical records. And he concluded that, all right, so that maybe there was some Oxycontin. He was prescribed Oxy for his pain. So it wouldn't be surprising, many patients, after they're taking Oxy orally for so long, they're not getting any pain relief. So Jimmy apparently was crushing it up and snorting it to get pain relief. But you have to look at, why was he getting the Oxy? He was dying. He was in agony. And if I could only show you the photographs of his lungs, they were dark purple. That's why they call it black lung disease. So I demanded a meeting with Mayor Bloomberg. The press was an enormous help, you know, shaming the mayor when I showed Dr. Baden's report and all the medical records. Bloomberg met me and Joe Zadroga. Well, first we had a meeting with Charles Hirsch. And basically he said, well, this is my opinion, I'm not changing it. And I said, doctor, don't you think it would help you to look at all the medical records to see the years of breathing problems that Mr. Zadroga had? But you know, sometimes when people make a mistake, they just don't want to admit it. They're ashamed to admit they may have made a mistake. So instead he did the opposite and he dug in. So we demanded an apology and a meeting with the mayor. he met with us at City Hall. And according to my friends in the press, it was the first time they ever heard the mayor apologize. Bloomberg was another one, like our current president, who doesn't always admit when he makes a mistake. Maybe that's something that all leaders sometimes hate to do. But anyway, Bloomberg apologized, and then he public apologized later that day. And Jimmy's family got his daughter got his line of duty death benefits. And I had already gotten him a very large award from the Victim Compensation Fund. We then amended it for his wrongful death. But at least Tyler Ann is financially secure, which is what I'm sure Joe and Linda Zadroga, Jimmy's parents, want, and I'm sure it's what Jimmy would have wanted for his daughter as well. And then finally, the Zadroga Health and Compensation Act became law, and that obviously was a big turn. It was only supposed to last, though, for 2 years, or a few years, till 2015, 4 years. Coincidentally, one of my Fordham Law School professors, Sheila Birnbaum, was named the special master. And even though she had no memory of me, I remembered her, and I was not much of a student. And I don't blame her for not remembering me. But I became very close with her because I represented more people in that version of the Zadroga Fund than anybody else. And, you know, the single biggest source of all my new clients is word of mouth. And because I've represented so many people, that's a lot of people recommending me, thankfully. Then finally, you know, we fought very hard to get this thing extended. That's when I met John Field in 2015, when we fought to get the Zadroga Act extended. We did get the health program extended for, till 2090, but the Victim Compensation Fund was only extended at that point till 2020. And then last year, obviously, thank God for John Stewart and John Field and the unions, we were able to get this bill permanently extended. So now the Victim Compensation Fund and the health program both will last for the rest of everybody's lifetime. And that brings us to my relationship with you and my partnership with you and helping me get the word out to people about the deadlines to register. You have been an inspiration to the whole 9/11 community, Chief. And you've been fabulous, and I'm so happy that our paths crossed. That's some more, but shared.
That's true. Thank you for those words. Most of the people by far who are registered in the World Trade Center Health Program and thus the Victim Compensation Fund are first responders. Only 5% are office workers. Please share the story of your own office and how cancer has devastated your office or hit your office just steps from the World Trade Center, because I think that brings it all home.
Well, in hindsight, it really shouldn't surprise anybody. We were 2 blocks from ground zero. Yes, I was one of the people caught in the dust cloud that day, but even if I hadn't been caught in the dust cloud, I returned to work the following month, as did the other 14 people who worked with me at my law firm. I told you, they said the air was safe to breathe. But you know what? We kind of knew that it wasn't, because whenever the air was blowing north, we're just north of the Trade Center, I'd look at Barbara and the other people in my office and say, God, what is that smell? And everybody would say, well, the buildings are still on fire. And then it became clear to us, it was the smell of death. It was the rotting corpses, the burning corpses, the concrete. They didn't find a phone or a computer. All the melting plastic, the jet fuel kept everything burning. And, I guess not surprisingly, of the 15 people in my office, Dennis Cotter, Liana Rivera, both aged 47, died of cancer. Liana had breast cancer, very aggressive cancer. Dennis had very aggressive kidney cancer. This is what we are now seeing with all of our clients, by the way, that this isn't just cancer, it's cancer on steroids. And so they died, and 5 others, including Barbara, as you know, who had B lymphoma. I have prostate cancer. A few others have skin cancer. 7 of the 14 of us have come down with one of the 68 cancers linked to the toxins. A number of the others have respiratory problems. And this is throughout my whole office building. I mean, altogether, Shelli, there were over 300,000 office workers who were all invited to come back and encouraged to come back to work. This is all south of Canal Street. There were 25,000 downtown residents. There were 50,000 students and teachers, all of us breathing the same toxic dust. So yes, at the beginning, most of my clients were firefighters, cops, construction workers, sanitation workers, EMTs, but now it's pretty even. And I suspect pretty soon we're going to see a lot more of these 300,000 people come down with cancer, and many of them already have. I mean, we represent 128 people who worked at Goldman Sachs. 128 of their employees have cancer. Now, they have thousands of employees, but it just shows you the magnitude. And sadly, as you pointed out, only 5% of these survivors, what we call the non-first responders, only 5% of them have registered with the health program so far, a free World Trade Center health program. It's crazy. So that's why I so appreciate people like you who are always helping me get the word out to these people. And, you know, we're doing outreach. Well, we used to, before the pandemic, we used to do a lot of these meetings where I'd fly all over and meet retiree groups in North Carolina, South Carolina. I've been to Utah, Florida, countless times. California, I've spoken to the firefighters out there, Chicago. Well, now with the pandemic, we're not doing that anymore. So we're doing webinars to do this outreach. So that's my new goal now, is to educate people to access what you are entitled to. Those are Jon Stewart's words.
And again, we need to remind people, if you are still well, if you are still healthy, and you were there that day by the World Trade Center, or you were in the area below Canal Street in the 8 months following, what do they need to do to protect themselves now? Because this help is really for a lifetime.
Right. So again, I have to be fair to the health program. You only have to have been south of Houston Street and in Western Brooklyn to be eligible for free health care. You have to have been south of Canal Street or at the Fresh Kills landfill or at the morgues or on the barges taking the debris out to Staten Island. And that makes you eligible for both the health program and the victim compensation fund. What people should do now, even if they're healthy, is get your proof, because as the years go by, it's going to be harder and harder for you to find witnesses to sign an affidavit saying, yeah, I remember Michael was at working at 11 Park Place. A lot of businesses don't exist anymore that used to exist, 19 years ago. So I'm telling people all the time, and people sometimes will say to me, well, I had some witnesses, but they're dead. That's going to even be more and more the case as the years go by. Now, fortunately, we do hearings all the time with the Victim Compensation Fund, and they give you a chance to say, I used to work at this firm that is now closed, and everyone's gone. But if you check with the IRS, you will see I worked for this company at this address. And the Victim Compensation Fund doesn't want to hurt you. They want to help you. It's non-adversarial. So we've been very successful getting people in who have less than the best proof, but they will accept affidavits that are sworn. They don't have to be notarized, but they have to be sworn by the person who's signing them as accurate. And I'm imploring everybody, if you were in the exposure zone, apply, register now, even if you're healthy, in case, God forbid, anytime in the next 70 years, you get cancer.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Michael?
No, I think you've covered my whole career. You have, and it was like a good psychiatric session here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all you do.
My pleasure. I love working with you, Shelli.
And ditto, ditto. Thank you,
All right.
Michael Barasch.
Take care.
Okay.